Welcome to Spectrum Perspectives, real talk with parents, professionals, and autism advocates, with your host, Cindy Gellermini.
It is mind-blowing because, John Paul would come home every day from whatever activity he had, and he would go up to his room. He puts about 4 or 5 pillows over his head, and he just sits there, and he's, vocalizing, he's laughing, he's crying. And I would come in and I would check on him, like, are you okay? And he'd be like sweaty, because he had all these pillows on him. And he'd push me away like, go away, I'm busy. And he'd put the pillows all back over his head and go back to it. He did that every day. And sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes for, a few hours, because he's just got a lot to say. His friend, or he wants to hear what his friends have to say, but that is his time. And I've asked some of my other friends, does your child kind of go away for a while? And you're wondering, and some of them are like, absolutely. And I said, okay, I think that's what they're doing.
So for people to understand, the hill is just the name that they've given to the space that they go to all talk to each other in their minds,
where they congregate, I guess. And John Paul said the reason for the pillows is because it drowns out all the noises around the house. It probably drowns out. Maybe it drowns out what he hears from me, what he's just trying to. It was funny when we were doing the experiments at my house, it was effortless for John Paul. When we did the same kind of experiments at Katie's house, John Paul was having some trouble. And I'm like, what's going on? And John Paul spelled, it's so loud in here. Nobody was talking, but there were too many things. And what was really funny is Houston, John Paul didn't tell me, Houston said that it was very loud because everyone's so excited on the hill, and especially their house, it was loud. And Houston said, and also the crew was saying to themselves about me, how does that mother do this? Like, how does she survive with this big kid? they were kind of like going, oh my God, because he was a lot, busy. And very, very busy, and got into everything. And Houston said that they were just like, well, how is she still, like, how does she do this every day? Right. And I feel that way about all of us autism moms. It's really can be really hard. And so John Paul was hearing a lot of that. I mean, it was just too much. And then when everyone went out of the room, he did fine. It was just too loud.
Yeah. Interesting. What about spiritual things? Because Houston can see angels and demons, and he goes to heaven and all these kind of things. Did John Paul experience those kind of things?
Yes, absolutely. We, my mother is very ill. She has Parkinson's, she has dementia. I mean, she is basically bedridden. She can't really talk anymore, but sometimes I think she knows who I am, I go see her, hold her hand, talk to her, love on her. And I remember one time John Paul and I were over there, and I said, and we call her Pay. That was Thomas's name because he couldn't say grandma, but he could say Pay. So I said, is Pay okay? And he said, yes, she's surrounded by angels. And gosh, I mean, I don't know, you want to go there, but after my stepfather died, I was just my stepdad, it was such a good person, and he adored John Paul so much. And I was so worried about him. There were things that had happened in the family that were never resolved. And it just made me really sad. And this was the message John Paul sent me from Sam. He spelled, I'm not angry anymore. You need to forgive. He said, the person that, I don't want to say their name, but he said, the person I'm talking about is suffering. And then the last line was, rest your mind. Because I was just spinning. And I thought, that's unbelievable.
Wait a minute. This is somebody that has passed away?
Yeah. They had already passed.
So he talked to them.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And also sent me messages from my father. The funny thing is, my father was wonderful. I think, he struggled a little bit with John Paul. John Paul was a lot, and it was hard. And I think so. I mean, my dad had a wonderful relationship, but I know that it was hard for him. So anyway, he had a message from my dad, and it was, I'm sorry. And then I said, well, what is it? And I said, who is he with? And John Paul spelled, he's with Aunt Helen, or he spelled it Aunt X, which was her nickname.
Mm.
Now this woman, she had died a long time ago. This was my dad's aunt. So I'm thinking
Did
that's
John
so
Paul know
interesting.
her?
And then I said, well, no, I didn't know her. And so I didn't know her either. I knew who she was. And then I said, well, what are they doing? And he spelled learning.
Hmm.
I mean, he said things like that to me all the time, Cindy. He always said that nothing matters here but love. He said, like, people would be unkind. Sometimes that happens. And John Paul would spell, they don't understand, just love them. And then he would say, love is all that matters.
Wow.
And he was obviously very well connected. I will tell you, this is very interesting. I don't know if you know who William Stillman is. He is, he's autistic, and he was the keynote speaker back when John Paul was 3. And I went to go hear him speak at a conference. It was actually a speech and language conference. And he's a fascinating person. He's autistic, obviously, like Temple Grandin, like can talk, he lives an independent life and everything, and a fabulous speaker. But I saw it, he also is really connected. He talked about being so connected. And I saw my friend run down with a photo, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to do that. So I grabbed a photo and I ran down and I said, could you just look at this and tell me if there's anything you can tell me that could help me? The funny thing is, the first thing he said was, well, there's a grandmother around all the time. And my grandmother had just passed. And in the middle of the night, while John Paul was running or just in the room for about 6 months after my grandmother passed, this toy would go off in the middle of the night. It was a toy, that star toy that you have to push down, and it's got the little loops that you put on it. It was up on a shelf high, and all of a sudden it would go off when I was feeling so desperate and so alone, because my husband was asleep, of course, and sleepy, and it would go off, and I kind of was like, I think I feel like there are people here with me, like I felt like I had support. I'd pray, Lord knows I'd pray like, Lord, help me. I don't know how I'm going to survive this, because it was all the time, And so William Stillman said that, which was interesting. And then he said, I want to tell you something. He said, John Paul is incredibly connected to the spiritual realm. So he is seeing the good and the bad. So just be aware of that. But he is
Katie
very
said
connected.
too. Yeah.
And this was when he was 3. And then I said,
3.
He was 3. And then I said, do you ever see him talking, or is there anything? And he said, he didn't say yes or no. What he said was, all I'm going to tell you is you need to get him on a keyboard because he has a lot to tell you. And that was when he was 3. But I didn't know how to get him on. I didn't know until I learned about RPM and S2C. How in the world do I do this?
Right.
I don't know how to teach him. Another woman years later gave me a sheet of paper that had a little bit about, at the time, SGC didn't exist. It was RPM, but she didn't give me enough information. It was just a sheet of paper. She just handed it to me. I was out publicly with John Paul. The message was trying to get to me. And it wasn't until I was at that prompt conference that it all came together. And that Elizabeth, it was an absolute, for me, it was a miracle that this all happened. But yeah, William Stillman, that was when he was 3. He told me all that. And I know that John Paul would just all of a sudden, he's looking up at the sky with a big smile. He would just stop and look at things, and he just didn't have fear. I think he knew that he was safe, that this is all temporary. All this stuff is temporary. There is something beyond. And I think that when you know that, he was just a bright spirit here, a bright light on earth, is what I feel. Kind of here to teach me something,
right?
And help me help others in the future. I really feel that way. Honestly, the other autistics have sent me many messages from John Paul for me.
Oh,
my mom told me, yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So before we get to that, so let's talk about what happened now. Okay. So, and it's only been a year.
Right. It was a year on September 25th, 24th.
Right.
Nope, right. September 24th. A year on September 24th. So John Paul had seizures, but I'm going to tell you something. Let's go back. So we had a great day. We had been at Bike Squad having fun. We get back to my house. We have pizza, and I'm tired. I tried to run next to the bike. I'm exhausted. I come home. I just want to take a little nap. the middle of the day, you know, no big deal. So he comes in and he sits next to me, and I said, honey, I just need to rest a little bit. So
He's on his
he
bike.
looks, we were home by then. Sorry. We had done bike
But before
swap.
that, though, he was riding his bike and you were running
He'd been
alongside
riding his
him.
bike.
Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is he was, that day, it was interesting. He was chasing his friend down and high-fiving them, like saying goodbye. Like he had this absolute need to high-five his friends multiple times. Oh, you know, and get a hold of them. So then
What's this, like days leading up to this?
No, it was the day, same day.
On that day. Oh,
On
okay.
that day.
Oh, okay.
So we get home, and I said, I just need to lay down. So I took a little nap. And then I will say, he came in and he stared at me, sat next to me, he looked at me, and then he just put his hand on me, and just a sweet look. And then he got up and left.
Yeah.
And then when I woke up, I couldn't hear him because, you know, I was like, this is strange.
Yeah, it's too quiet.
Too quiet. So I just got that funny feeling. And then I went to my bedroom and I looked down, and he was in the hot tub. So he was floating in the hot tub, face down. And I can talk about it now. This is amazing. I can talk about this because
well, this is why I waited to do this interview for a while. I wanted to make sure you were ready.
Yeah, I know. And I can. Some days maybe I can't talk about it. Today, right now, I can. My husband. I mean, it was just. I've never heard sounds out of my husband. They were just so high, you know, just. And we tried to pull him out of the hot tub. We couldn't because he's so big. So I started giving him CPR from the hot tub. It was a nightmare because the ground next to the hot tub was mossy. So we kept slipping and falling, trying to get him out. And then I called 911, obviously, and was waiting for them. After we had done CPR for a few minutes, I'm like, we need more. And so I was just, it was just like I was in a movie. I was in a movie.
Yeah.
And
I say the same thing.
Yeah, just like a movie. And I couldn't even feel myself.
Yeah.
I couldn't even feel myself. And so they worked on him for a while. And then they just said, you know, he's gone. Now, we'll say when I was giving him CPR, he threw up. And I don't know if that was just, he was already dead and that was just a body thing that happens. But he threw up and he made a noise. And I thought his color started getting better. It started getting more pink again. And then nothing. And I almost feel like he was given a choice right there. And he chose heaven. That's where he wanted to go. And I firmly believe that. I think he was given a choice. You know, obviously I go to a therapist. We talk about, you know, working through the grief and everything. And he said, it's like his life was preparing you for that moment because we'd had so many close calls with him. But anyway, after that, they let me lay down with them for a long time. You know, I just wanted to be with them. And I'm going to cry, so I can't talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
But you know,
that's okay. I don't want to focus on that.
But I want to say, I told him he was a wonderful son. I wanted him to know what a great son he had been here, and that we're going to miss him so much. Okay.
What I would like to know is what his friends have told you that he has said to them since.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
What gets me is that I listen to videos, you know, because I'm in the same boat as you, right? It's been long.
Right.
I'm coming up on 7 years now. November, 7 years.
Yeah.
But I'm obsessed with heaven. And I was for 6 months ahead of time. I was constantly reading books and listening to videos of people that had been to heaven and come back and stuff. So it was like I was being prepared so that when the day came, I knew where he was, right?
Exactly.
So when I listen to these videos, people always say that they don't talk to you with words out of their mouth. It's almost like a telepathy, like they speak to you in your mind. It's like you speak spirit to spirit, not physical body, but spirit to spirit, right? And so when I'm listening to how these kids can listen to thoughts, and then they also are seeing angels and all these kind of things, and people that have passed, it's like it's right here. It's like, see the divider here and right in my book. It's like, here's our world here, and here's heaven, and they're right here. It's right here.
Exactly.
You know, so
Exactly.
so now these kids that they were talking to him already, John Paul, you know, in their minds, they're still talking to him because it's like he's right here.
I asked Lily, do you still talk, that's his girlfriend of 5 years. I
Yeah.
said, do you still talk to John Paul? She spells every day. She's on speaker every day. He delivers messages for me. I have mothers who call me that say, my son really needs you to hear this information. Can you come over and let him? This is what one of John Paul's friends wrote when he came to visit after John Paul had passed.
Yeah.
I find this is his friend Noah. Okay, it's right here. So this is what he spelled in the other room. I was in the living room. He was in the side room. JP told me the day before that he had to leave this world because it couldn't contain him and sustain his mission as God had designed it for him. I need to say that I heard what Libby was saying, and yes, this place is just dripping with JP. I was afraid of coming because of the tide of emotions and how my body would react. But it is like he never left and is wrapped completely around me and integrated into my energy like he never could be before. He is in us, Libby, so much more a part of us than he could possibly be if he was physically here.
Right.
And that, how comforting. You know, that was beautiful. And he just said that while he was there. Okay, so my friend Jennifer, the one who had written the story when John Paul had eloped years before, she's an excellent writer, and she does
That
a
was when he
show.
ran to the ocean.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
The time
So
of his
she wrote a
life.
story, what, like for the news or something about that.
Yeah, just because I was kind of like, oh, great, here goes the negligent mother. So anyway, she does this wonderful show on PBS called Your Fantastic Mind. And she was working with a woman who had incredible trauma from being in the military. And so Emory does a PTSD treatment program. So my friend was doing a story on her. Her name's Becky. So she called and she said, Becky, we have to cancel. One of my best friend's sons died. And so Becky says to her, describes him to a T. She says, is he blah, blah. So she sends a photo. And Becky said, that's the boy. This boy has been telling me, you have got to go talk to my mother. You have to. She needs you. Please go find my mother. So what Becky said is, Jennifer, you and I did not meet because of your story. We met because of John Paul. She said, this is how God works. And she said, John Paul wants me to come and hug his mother and tell her all the things that I need to know about his death.
Mm.
So, because I was obviously beside myself, you know, I couldn't get off the floor for about 3 days, pretty much. I just laid on the floor. I had friends there, and they'd come up and talk to me and comfort me and stuff. Anyway, so my friends kind of circled around me and they were praying like, God, just give her something, a relief of some kind, some peace. And the next day is when, or Jennifer had the conversation with Becky. And then Jennifer calls me and says, you're not going to believe this, but here it is. And she said, can this woman come? I said, absolutely. She needs to come. So she came, she's wonderful. So what happened to Becky is her trauma response is she had seizures. She's had a lot of interesting things happen to her, but she would have seizures.
Well,
And
she
one of
was
her
in the
seizures,
military, right?
yes. And I mean, she had shrapnel, I mean, in her brain, but she was suffering from headaches for years, and they finally figured out what it was. But the trauma of what she saw, she was a military photographer, and she traveled with a medical group, and she saw things that were horrid. So her response is she'd have a seizure. That was her trauma response. So in one of her seizures, she died, just like John Paul did. But they brought her back. She came back. She was gone for about 3 or 4 minutes, and she had the whole heaven experience. And she even said that she wanted to stay. And I don't know how, you know, like you said, how the communication is telepathically more than like. And they said, no, you've got to go back. And so, but after that, she said the portal to heaven never closed for her. She realized that she was seeing people that had passed, and that people were talking to her, and but she said, Libby, I just want to tell you, heaven is the most wonderful place. She said, it is like colors you've never seen, music you've never heard, and the feeling of love. She said, it is so overwhelming. and wonderful. She said, why would you want to come back after you've experienced that? And she said she loves to see John Paul. She still sees him. She still calls me and lets me know things that she might see. She always knows when I need a call, which of course is also very interesting. One time she called me and I was already crying. And she said, are you okay? I said, no, I'm not okay. She's like, I know. That's why I'm calling you. He's fine. But anyway, what she told me was when she came, she did. She hugged me and we sat down and she said, John Paul wants you to know that he's so sorry you're so sad, but he is so happy. She said, Libby, if you could see him now, he's bigger than he was even on earth. He can talk, he can sing, he has no fat. She's like, he's like a warrior. He just and he's so happy and just having the time of his life. And she said, tell my mom that I died in my favorite place on a beautiful day with everybody resting. He said it was the perfect death. And she said, Libby, you know, I know everyone, you think it's a seizure. She said, it was a heart attack. And Houston said the same thing, that he died of a heart attack. I did not have an autopsy done. I just couldn't take it. I didn't really need an answer because I just didn't. I had been going, I didn't know, I just didn't know what it was. I figured it was a seizure or a heart attack. I just didn't want him cut on. My friend said her son had had an autopsy and she wished she hadn't done it. So I said, I don't need it. So she said it was a heart attack. Houston said it was a heart attack. I had actually been planning to make an appointment with a cardiologist because I had become concerned. First of all, his size. And secondly, he was sweating really funny and I didn't like the sweating patterns he was making. And I felt like that maybe we needed to check his heart out a little bit. He'd get really like heavy breathing and winded. And so that made sense to me. It doesn't really matter. In the end, he passed and he let me know it was a painless death. And she said, Libby, he wants you to know this. He wants you to know there was nothing you could have done that day to prevent it. He would have died if you had been sitting right next to him. He wants you to know that. He wants you to know that you gave him a beautiful life and that you did everything you could. He said that he really wanted me to know that. And then Houston said that, went further, Houston had said that John Paul told him, tell mom to drop her fears. And those were some of my fears. Could I have prevented it?
Sure.
Did I do everything I could do to help him? You know, and then another one was this documentary we're in. You know, scared to put yourself out there. That's scary. But, you know, after you, and you know this, after you have a child die, and as John Paul basically died in my arms, you know, you just aren't scared of the same things you might have been scared of before. I realized that it really doesn't matter what other people think. I don't really care because I'm telling the truth. And why should I be afraid of telling the truth?
Right. Right.
So John Paul wanted me to know that because he was really excited about the documentary. So, you know, that's Becky. And Becky's become my friend and we talk and she's just wonderful. And she will call me and say the most hilarious thing. She's like, Libby, she'll see him and she says, and of course it's awesome because she's heaven. And she'll say, but he was walking with my dog, her dog that's really huge too, big black dog. She said her dog's Arco. She said she's walking with Arco, and she said, and he has a cat balanced on his head. Now the funny thing about
he has a what on his head?
A cat, a kitty cat. Now the funny thing about that is that John Paul balanced things on his head. He loved to balance things on his head. She said he is so funny. And he's walking with his cat. And I sent her a picture of John Paul balancing one of my like probably expensive vases or something on his head and just laughing. I have videos of it. And I sent it to her and I said, you mean like that? And there was another thing. Oh, another thing she said that was incredible when she came, the very first thing she said to me was, he's very, very funny. And you know, John Paul had serious pica and he ate anything and everything. And we had to lock the kitchen. I mean, you couldn't take food out of him because he was so big. He shoved something in his mouth and then turned his back. It was impossible. Yeah. In the hospital here and there and they always looked at me and said, we know that you could not have prevented this. I mean, that no one ever gave me any trouble, you know. Mm-hmm. But she said the first thing he said to Becky, he said, tell mom I'm full. Tell her I'm full. That was the first thing he said, which all my friends looked at each other and we just all burst out laughing. You know, I really wish mothers who lose anyone really had it was just validating. It was just, I think John Paul found her for me because he knew my mother is tortured. Like I just didn't know I knew I have to survive because I have another child and I have friends and family and I have to live my life. But I'm telling you, you know how it feels. And I just had, also being an autism mom for the last, 17 years, I've been on high alert.
Right.
And I never stopped moving. And I was constantly doing stuff, whether it was for Thomas, but John Paul or Peter. But when you're out, you're always on high alert. And I didn't know what to do with myself because all of a sudden he was gone. And it just felt so odd. And I just couldn't put my head around it. I told Peter, I said, I don't know what to do. I just want to crawl out of my skin. I went out to outside of the house and I just laid down. I just wanted to just be one with the earth and just disappear. I just couldn't take it. Yeah. And I still struggle with that. I still struggle sometimes with this energy, this like anxious energy that what do I do with this?
I've explained that to people that when you have a special needs child, your whole life is wrapped up in them. Like my day was timed to the minute. From the second he got up, bam, I have to pop out of bed and I got to follow him downstairs and bring him into the bathroom, make sure he goes to the bathroom, get him in the shower, wash him, dress him, feed him, make sure that he gets where he has to go on time. You know what I mean? And you're always on high alert too, because are they going to elope? Are they going to do this? Is he going to throw up? Is he going to have a seizure? Is he going to, it's like your whole world is constantly like that. And for all of a sudden that to be,
I even said to Peter, Peter, was John Paul just a dream? Yeah. Was this a dream and I just woke up? I couldn't, it just didn't even seem real.
Yeah.
And then I started getting numbers. So John Paul sends me numbers constantly. His favorite.
Oh, do you see the 222?
I see
1111.
1111 and 111 are his favorites, but he'll send me other ones. And now he's getting really fancy in how he sends them to me. I mean, I'll see him in the number of likes on a post I made about him.
Yeah.
Or I'll see it's constant. And Becky told me, yes, he sends you numbers because he knows you need them, but he's always there. My stepfather sent me feathers. My dad, I think, sent me songs. I mean, it's just, if people just really could raise their vibration and really look at what.
Do you know about my penguins?
What is around them?
Can I tell you about the penguins?
Yes, you told me about your penguins. I'm looking at your wonderful books behind you.
Everything's reversed. Everything on my right.
I love it. I love them. Yes, I love tell your penguin again. Tell me again.
When Robbie went to heaven and all the family comes over, somebody left and they came back. And there was a little penguin. This isn't it, but it was something like this. There was this little toy penguin on my lawn, and they came back and they said, "Were your nieces here today? Did they drop a penguin?" I said, "No, there were no kids here today." And I put it down and I didn't think anything of it. Then my husband goes back to work and he sees this paperweight penguin on his desk. He's like, "Where did this penguin come from?" And nobody knew. And we kept seeing penguins everywhere. And then the day of his life celebration service, my daughter had a dream that Robbie showed up at my front door wearing a tuxedo, and she said, "Mommy, looks so good. He looked like Leo DiCaprio, Oh,
wow.
And so I Googled Leo DiCaprio in a tuxedo, and when I typed in tux, a picture of a penguin popped up because it's also called a penguin suit.
Yes.
I was like, you got to be kidding
That's
me.
incredible.
So then, when we went to his group home a couple weeks later to clean out his room, he always watched Disney movies on DVD. And I said, I want to see what the last movie is that he watched. And I hit the DVD player and out comes Happy Feet. I said,
my God.
Okay, that's it.
That's incredible. I mean, you can't make it up. You can't
No,
make it
you
up.
can't. I could not make that up because I really didn't know that he liked penguins that much. I knew he liked Mary Poppins. He liked the scene where Dick Van Dyke is dancing with the penguins.
Right.
I knew that. And I knew that he watched Happy Feet, but I didn't know that he really liked it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
I love that.
So anyway, the books were that was all Robbie. That was all his idea.
Well, see, that's the thing.
I never would have thought of that.
He was there. He gave that to you to share with the world. Just like I woke up and I said, I need to do this foundation for John Paul. And then I'm like, how do I tie this together? And then all of a sudden it's like, manatees. He loved manatees. You know, like
Yes.
it was just, I worked feverishly after he passed until the celebration of life that we had, which was just awesome. All the autistics together. It was so much love in the room. Becky watched it and she said, Libby, there were angels just everywhere in
Yeah.
that room. And John Paul was in the front having the time of his life. She always said, John Paul, she likes to say the cadence of heaven. And she said, John Paul, his cadence didn't make sense here on earth, but it's perfect in heaven.
Yeah.
It makes total sense in heaven.
Yeah.
And she said he was conducting everything and that it was just, she said it was just so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
But the manatees, it was just being like spoon fed to me, you know.
Yes.
And anyway, and he had his manatee poem, like it was just, and so we gave little letter boards out to everyone at the funeral with his manatee poem on the back. And apparently the other autistics love using that are open and can use the boards like that, love to spell on it. And it just, you know, it just kind of all came together. And I really felt it was John Paul just pushing it through. You know, we are going to help. You're going to be okay, Mom, because you're going to do this.
Right.
You're going to be busy with this.
Right.
You know, and I sometimes, you know, sometimes I really, I don't know, do you ever do this? Like, I'll sit there and I'll just like get really quiet. We made a garden. One of the autism moms, Susie, right, she said, let's do a memorial garden, a rock garden, and everyone paints a rock. So we made this beautiful garden in the back. I love it. And if it doesn't matter where I am, but when I sit out there or if I'm in the car, if I get really quiet, I try to picture him right next to me. And that's the same thing you said earlier is what Becky said. Becky said, Libby, if you understood that heaven is just right here, she said, it's here. Right. She said, and she said, it's almost like crazy because what you just said is what she said to me. Right. And she said, in time is not linear like we think of it. It's stacked.
Right. It's somehow wrapped in.
Yes.
Yeah. I've heard people explain it.
I have too, and they do it really well, and I can't ever remember how to do it, how to explain it the same way. But she said, for him, you're gone a second, but you've got to wait a lifetime where you are. But for him, it's like he'll turn around and be like, oh, hey, Mom, you know. And I mean, I love the images of that she gives me of him like playing football, but instead of tackling, he runs up and hugs people because that's and everyone's laughing. Yeah. She said he created a cabin for himself in heaven, and we have a cabin. She described it almost to the T, but it's bigger. She said, and he swims in the ocean with manatees. She said when he died, the hot tub opened up like an ocean, and he just swam away.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that I had family. She said, Libby, you had so much family trying to comfort you there. She said it was just, and your father and your stepfather were there to take him, and they had been there all week. Funny enough, I had a video of John Paul days before he died, and he was in the hot tub. I can't believe I took this video. I don't know why. And he's just looking up and smiling. And then he looks at me and he waves, and then he goes right back. And he is just, it's like he's just loving seeing whatever. And normally I would have asked him about it, but I didn't. He might have told me, you know, but he knew he was leaving. He just didn't know when. And my dad and stepfather knew they were taking him. They just didn't know when. And I said, well, why were they together like that? Because it's not that they were enemies. They were friendly, but why would they be together? And she said, because when you die, your ego is gone and it's just love. Right. She said, and they loved you and they loved him. Right. And they were there together. She said, because nothing matters. All that stupid earthly stuff is gone.
It all goes away. Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, she said, she said, you had a great grandfather that was trying to help you get John Paul out of the hot tub. And she said, it's like McDougal. And I'm laughing. McDougal is my grandmother's father. And I went to a box of photos that I have that's just like thrown photos in a box. I open it, and on the very top is an old photo of him from like 18 something. And wow. She said, but he wasn't dressed that way. He wasn't formal. And I'm thinking, yeah, again, you can't make this stuff up. You just can't. If people have had this death experience with someone they're really close to, I think they understand, or if they just keep their eyes open and look and really let themselves feel, I think that it's just, they're always trying to contact you. They're trying to let you know they're okay, they're there. That's the way I feel. Do you feel that way with Robbie?
Well, Houston told me that Robbie tries to talk to me, but I'm always too busy, so I don't hear him.
Mm.
Which made me laugh because that's very true.
That's hilarious. But at least you know he's there.
But you see, but that's my trauma response.
Yeah.
Is busy, busy, busy.
You stay busy.
Yeah.
Busy, busy. Because you don't, is it because you just don't want to be alone in your thoughts? It's easier to just be busy, and it physically feels better to be busy than to sit in stillness. Is that,
Yeah.
I feel that way a lot.
Mhm.
I get
But I think
panicky.
it's because, like I said, my life was so to the second with Robbie. You're constantly in that fight or flight mode, you know.
Always.
And-
Always.
And to sit still is, it's like I can't do it.
It's so odd. And, you know, and I will say this too, I was trying to explain to my friend, you know, really, it really is hard for people who don't have a child in that situation. It's really hard to understand, but also for me, and I think maybe probably everyone who has in the back of your head, you're constantly like, it's always in your head. What am I going to do when I die? What's going to happen to my child? What,
I
like,
don't have to worry about that anymore.
No. And that was the other worry that, I'm sorry, that was the other worry. He said, Mom, drop your fears.
Right.
You know, because I was sort of obsessed with what's going to happen to my big boy. I mean, people are going to be nice to him, or are they going to be ugly to him? Because I was all, and I hate it for my friends. I'm, it's like part of like what I'm hoping we can come up with a solution, a good solution, you know, where kids are presumed confident, they have purpose.
Yep.
Because that, I know that in the back of my head is always my fear, is what I need to know what the future holds. And the thing is, it's like you don't want to leave your child, but you don't want your child to go before you either.
Right.
So it's like you can't win either way.
Right. It's true.
You know, they're both not great options.
Right.
You have no choice. So anyway, yeah.
So did you start a foundation?
I did. I started, it's called Love John Paul. And I did that because I wanted to be kind of sound like a letter by John Paul, like Love John Paul, like this is for my friends, for my, you know. And then I started an Instagram, Love Like John Paul, to kind of get people so they can see who he was and kind of tell his story. And then I put in stuff about being an SLP and things parents need to know, that when your child's being tested, they're probably just being motor tested. They're not being cognitively tested, you know, things that parents need to know. But, and there's so many ways to help the autism community. It's like, because I don't think there's enough support out there.
Right.
So almost anything you do is going to be helpful to an autistic family. And it's so isolating and it's so lonely. Like there's just a lot to be done. But I just, so that's my foundation. And, we just want to help. We just want to, I really want people to be able to spell if they want to spell with their kids. They need to know about it. At one point I was going to my friend's practice and working with kids there, introducing spelling to them. There's just so much, it's almost overwhelming, the need. That, don't you feel that? Like sometimes you just sit there and think, oh my gosh, there's so much that needs to be done for the autistic population.
There is, and then you just have to zone in.
Yeah.
And I think just focus on the spelling thing because nobody else is really doing that.
Then that's really what we had focused on. The mission statement talks about autism awareness, but then also about the community spelling. That is really big because that's the problem, is nobody knows about it because they're not going to hear about it in the schools. They're not going to hear about it from an SLP. You just have to be lucky that a girl sitting next to you at a conference tells you about it. You know?
There you go. And there you go. All right. So tell me again, what's your Facebook, your Instagram, so that people can find you and follow you?
My Instagram is Love Like John Paul.
Okay. There's no little dashes in there or anything?
Nope. It's just Love Like John Paul.
Okay.
We wanted to do Love John Paul on that too, but it was taken. So it was, we couldn't do it. And we couldn't put a little anything. Yeah. So I said, well, if we could all just love like John Paul, the world would be so much kinder.
Amen. Definitely.
So yeah, exactly.
All right. I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
We could talk all day and all night.
I love talking with you. I just do. I do.
Yeah,
one of these days we'll all have to get together with Katie and just hang out if we're up.
I'm coming to Georgia.
Yes, please. Be awesome. Love that.
Okay. All right. Thanks for being here
Okay,
today.
well, thanks so much. Thank you.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed listening and it helped you gain a new perspective. To learn more about our children's book series, Robbie's World and His Spectrum of Adventures, or to learn more about what we do at Robbie's World Foundation, simply visit our website at robbiesworldbook.com.
Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to join us again on our next episode of Spectrum Perspectives.